My name is Evelyn Turner, and I'm 70 years old. I thought aging meant peace rocking on my porch in Austin, sipping tea, waiting for my daughter Melissa to visit with a hug. But one phone message shattered everything. I pressed play and heard Melissa's voice, my only child. Her words froze me. "Derek, Sunset Haven will take Mom for $900 a month. Once she's in, we can sell the house for $950,000. She won't fight it. She's too old." My knees gave out. Melissa. The little girl I raised with 2 jobs. The one I sacrificed everything for. Plotting to discard me in a cheap nursing home, to steal the house I built with my own hands. The man she called Derek replied, "Good idea. We'll get her to sign over power of attorney. No one will question it." Friends, can you imagine that pain? To hear your own child call you a burden? Would you forgive, or would you feel the same crushing betrayal? Please watch this story until the end and share your thoughts in the comments. Because no senior should ever be made to feel disposable. When I was in my 20s, I believed I had a lifetime of happiness ahead of me. I married young, full of hope, and soon Melissa came into the world. But life is cruel sometimes. When Melissa was only 8, her father collapsed at work from a heart attack. Just like that, I became a widow, left to raise a little girl on my own. I remember standing in that hospital corridor, clutching Melissa's small hand, trying not to cry so she wouldn't break down. I promised myself, and I promised her, that no matter how hard it became, I would never let her go without. From that moment on, I worked 2 jobs. During the day, I was a seamstress in a little shop on South Congress Avenue. At night, I balanced books for a small grocery store. My hands were always sore from stitching, my eyes blurry from numbers, but I pushed through. Every extra dollar went into Melissa's future. We lived modestly, but I tried to give her joy. On weekends, I saved coins in a jar so we could buy ice cream or take a bus ride downtown just to see the Christmas lights. I remember the way her face lit up when I surprised her with a secondhand bicycle one spring. That smile was worth every blister on my palms. The house we live in now, the one Melissa and Derek want so badly, was my dream and my burden. I bought it when Melissa was in high school. It wasn't grand then, just a small place on the edge of Austin with peeling paint and a tired roof. But it was ours. I spent years fixing it up, painting walls, planting roses, tightening loose steps, turning it into a true home. Every corner of this house holds a story. The kitchen table where Melissa did her homework while I cooked beans and rice. The porch swing where she sat crying after her first heartbreak. The hallway where I measured her height year after year, little pencil marks climbing the wall. This house isn't just wood and brick, it's the very fabric of our lives. So when I heard her voice in that message, talking about selling it as if it were nothing, the betrayal felt like someone tearing my soul apart. I gave her everything. I never remarried, because I didn't want her to feel divided. I skipped vacations, wore the same shoes until the soles were thin, just so she could have new books, dance lessons, a prom dress. I stayed up through countless nights when she was sick, whispering prayers into the dark. Melissa once told me, "Mom, when I grow up, I'll take care of you the way you took care of me." I believed her. I carried those words in my heart like a promise. But words can change, and people can change. I know many of you listening right now understand what I mean. Maybe you too sacrificed for your children, only to feel forgotten as the years passed. Maybe you know that quiet ache when your phone doesn't ring, when holidays go by with an empty chair at the table. It is a loneliness that can be heavier than any physical burden. As I share these memories, I realize something. My story isn't just mine. It belongs to anyone who has ever loved too deeply, given too freely, and found themselves repaid with silence or coldness. If you feel that in your own life, I want you to know you are not alone. And if this story touches you, I ask you kindly, give this video a like. Not for me, but so that more people who carry the same hurt in their hearts might find it. And if you want to hear more stories that speak to the struggles and the strength of people like us, please subscribe to this channel. Together, we can make sure none of us feels invisible. But I don't want to leave you in sorrow, because even in those hardest years, there was beauty. There were the mornings when Melissa and I shared pancakes before school. The laughter when we tried to decorate a Christmas tree that leaned sideways because the stand was broken. The nights we sang along to old country songs while folding laundry. I look back now, and I see how those small moments made all the sacrifice worthwhile. They remind me that my love was real, even if her loyalty faded. And so, when Melissa's voice message reached me, it wasn't just about losing a house. It was about losing the very bond I thought we had built through decades of sacrifice. That is why my heart cracked in two. But to truly understand how I went from heartbreak to strength, you need to hear what came after, because betrayal doesn't end with tears. Sometimes it awakens a fire you never knew you still carried. The voice message was not the first wound. It was only the sharpest cut in a long line of hurts that had been building for years. Looking back, I realized the signs were always there, small at first, but each one carving a deeper scar into my heart. After Melissa married Derek, something in her shifted. At first, I told myself it was just the excitement of a new marriage. Newlyweds are busy, wrapped up in each other's lives. But months turned into years, and the warm daughter I once knew seemed to vanish. The visits grew fewer, the phone calls shorter, holidays became excuses. I would sit at my kitchen table, food laid out for 3, and watch the clock tick past hour after hour. Sometimes they came late. Sometimes they did not come at all. The silence in the house felt heavier than bricks. When they did visit, the air was different. Melissa no longer looked at me the way she once did. She spoke with a clipped tone, as if every word cost her patience. Derek was worse. He would glance around the house, eyes landing on the furniture, the photographs, the little details of a life built over decades. His gaze was not admiration. It was calculation, like a man inspecting property he already owned. I remember one evening vividly. Melissa and Derek had come over for dinner. I spent the entire afternoon cooking roast chicken, mashed potatoes, cornbread, the kind of meal that used to make Melissa smile. But when they sat down, Melissa hardly touched her plate. Derek leaned back and said with a smirk, "This house is far too big for just one old woman. Wouldn't it be better if it were put to good use?" His words pierced me, but I forced a smile. "This house is my home," I said quietly. "Every corner has memories." Melissa laughed softly, almost bitterly. "Mom, you hold on to the past too tightly. Times change. Maybe you should think about letting go." Letting go. That was easy for her to say. She had no idea what it meant to scrub floors at midnight so her child could have new shoes for school. She had no idea what it felt like to patch a roof with trembling hands because there was no one else to do it. This house was not just a building, it was the very proof of my survival. But I stayed silent. Again and again I swallowed my pride, telling myself not to make trouble. After all, she was my only child. If I pushed her away, what would I have left? Still, the little humiliations piled up. Derek once opened my mail without asking, holding up my bank statement as if it belonged to him. Melissa scolded me for not planning ahead, as if 70 years of sacrifice meant nothing. At church gatherings, she would roll her eyes if I shared a story, as though my voice embarrassed her. Each time I told myself it didn't matter. Each time I tucked the pain away in the corners of my heart. But pain does not disappear. It grows. There was one night I will never forget it. I had been invited to their home for dinner. When I arrived, I found them whispering in the kitchen. My name fell from Melissa's lips, followed by the words burden and money. They froze when they saw me standing there. The room turned stiff, their smiles forced. I acted as if I had not heard, but my stomach knotted so tightly I could hardly eat. That was the night I went home and sat alone in the dark. I realized that the bond I thought unbreakable was already cracking. The daughter who once promised to care for me now saw me as an obstacle. And then came that voice message. Cruel confirmation of everything I had tried not to believe. I want to pause here and ask you something. Have you ever endured those quiet cuts, the small dismissals, the careless words from the very people you love most? Have you ever felt like you were no longer seen as a parent, but as a problem? If you have, I want you to share it in the comments below. Tell your story. Because when we share, we remind each other that we are not alone in this pain. When I think back on those years, the word that comes to mind is endurance. I endured the silence. I endured the dismissals. I endured the feeling of being pushed aside. But endurance is not the same as acceptance. Deep down, a fire was stirring. The betrayal that had grown from whispers to silence to smirks had finally reached its breaking point. The voice message was not the beginning of my suffering. It was the end of my patience. And that is where the story turns. because grief and endurance can sometimes awaken something unexpected: courage. To show you how I found that courage and what I decided to do after hearing Melissa and Derek's cruel plan, I need to take you into the next chapter, the part where silence turned into action. For days after that voice message, I walked through my house in silence, listening to the creak of the floorboards, the hum of the old refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock. Each sound reminded me, this was my home. No one was going to take it from me. I saved the message. I replayed it over and over, not because I wanted to hurt myself, but because I knew it was evidence, proof of their betrayal. Finally, I picked up the phone and called an old friend of my late husband. His name was Thomas Gray, a lawyer who had always treated me with kindness. "Thomas," I said, voice trembling, "I think my daughter is planning to put me in a nursing home against my will." He was quiet for a moment, then answered firmly, "Evelyn, you come to my office tomorrow. Bring that recording. We're going to protect you." The next morning I put on my best dress, the one I used to wear to church on Easter. I wanted to look strong, even if inside I was shaking. I walked into Thomas's office, sat down across from his big wooden desk, and played the message. When it ended, he leaned back, shook his head, and muttered, "Shameful, absolutely shameful." "What can I do?" I whispered. "They're my family." "They may be family," he said, "but they're also trying to rob you. We'll set up a trust, move your assets, and Evelyn, don't sign anything they put in front of you. Promise me." "I promise," I said. Over the next week, I followed his instructions. I went to the bank, spoke with the manager, and moved my accounts into a trust with my name locked tight. My neighbor, Nora Williams, who had been like a sister to me for over 40 years, went with me for support. She held my hand when I felt faint, whispered, "You're stronger than you think, Evelyn." Then came the night of the confrontation. Melissa and Derek invited me to dinner at their home. Something about the tone in Melissa's voice made my stomach twist, but I went. I had Thomas's advice ringing in my ears. I carried a copy of the recording tucked in my purse, along with the new legal papers Thomas had prepared. We sat down to eat. Derek poured wine, his smile too wide, too smooth. Melissa poked at her food, then slid a stack of papers across the table. "Mom," she said softly, "this is just a standard document. It'll make things easier if anything ever happens to you. Just sign here, okay?" I picked up the papers. Power of attorney. Exactly what Thomas had warned me about. I looked at her, my hands steady now. "Melissa," I said, "why don't you tell me what this really is? Why don't you tell me what you and Derek planned at Sunset Haven?" Her face went pale. "Mom, I don't know what you mean." Derek leaned forward. "Evelyn, don't make this difficult. We're only trying to help you." "Help me?" I laughed bitterly. "Help me by shipping me off to a cheap nursing home and selling my house out from under me?" Melissa's eyes widened. How do you know about that?" I reached into my purse and laid my phone on the table. I pressed play. Her own voice filled the room, every cruel word echoing off the walls. Melissa covered her mouth. Derek cursed under his breath. "That's how I know," I said firmly. "I may be 70, but I'm not blind. And I'm not stupid." For a long moment, the room was silent except for the recording. Then Derek slammed his fist on the table. "You had no right to record that." "I had every right," I shot back. "It was sent to me by mistake, but maybe it was God's way of opening my eyes." Melissa whispered, "Mom, please." "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't call me Mom like that, not after plotting behind my back." Nora, who had come with me and was sitting quietly in the corner, finally spoke. "Melissa, I've known your mother for 40 years. She has given you everything. And this is how you repay her?" Melissa's shoulders slumped. She stared at the table, tears brimming. Derek, though, stayed cold, his jaw tight, eyes full of anger. I pulled the legal papers from my purse and placed them beside the untouched food. "These are my new documents," I said. "My house is protected. My accounts are in a trust. If you try to push me again, Thomas Gray will be in court before you can blink." The room grew hot with tension. Melissa finally choked out, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "And the worst part isn't the money. It's knowing that my own daughter thought I was just a burden to be moved out of the way." Tears slid down her cheeks. Derek muttered something under his breath, then stormed into the kitchen. I sat there, breathing hard, my heart pounding. For the first time in years, I didn't feel weak. I felt strong. I pushed the papers back toward Melissa. "You can keep these, because I will never sign them." Then I stood up. Nora rose beside me. I looked one last time at my daughter. "Melissa, I hope one day you understand what you've done, but until then I will protect myself. I will not be your victim." With that, I walked out of their house, the night air cool against my face, my steps firm. That confrontation didn't end the story. It only opened a new chapter, one filled with consequences, choices, and the question of whether a bond so broken could ever be repaired. When I left Melissa's house that night, the cool Texas air wrapped around me like a blanket. My heart was still racing, my hands still trembling, but there was something new inside me, a strange calm. For the first time in years, I had stood tall. I had spoken with the voice I thought I had lost. The ride home was quiet. Nora sat beside me, her hand gently resting on mine. "You did the right thing," she whispered. I nodded, though my eyes blurred with tears. Back inside my home, I sank into the armchair by the window. The same armchair where I had once held baby Melissa against my chest, rocking her to sleep. Memories flooded in her laughter as a little girl, the way she used to call out, "Mommy, look at me." The sweetness of those days clashed with the cruelty of the present. I asked myself, how did we get here? How did a bond built with so much sacrifice twist into this? In the days that followed, the silence between us grew. Melissa did not call. Derek certainly didn't. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood, as it always does in communities like ours. People gave me looks, some pitying, some supportive. At church, Mrs. Patterson, who had known me since Melissa was a child, placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're strong, Evelyn. Don't let shame weigh you down. This is not your fault." Her words lifted a piece of the burden I carried. Still, at night, when the house was too quiet, the weight of loneliness pressed hard against me. I found myself replaying not just the message but also the years of little slights, the moments I had brushed aside. Was there a path back? Could Melissa and I ever mend what was broken? One afternoon I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Just Melissa's handwriting on the envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. "Mom, I don't know how to explain myself. I know you think I betrayed you, and maybe I did. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone, but I see now how cruel it must have sounded. I don't expect you to forgive me right now, but I hope someday you will." I read it again and again. Each word cut and comforted at the same time. She was not denying what she had done, but she was not truly apologizing either. It was a halfway confession, a halfway plea. My heart longed to hear her voice as a daughter again, but my mind warned me not to trust too quickly. So I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Life went on. I kept tending my roses. I joined a senior book club at the library, where we read stories of resilience and survival. I found new laughter among friends who understood loss and betrayal. At church, I sang hymns louder than I had in years, letting the words heal me. But no matter how full my days became, a shadow lingered. That shadow was Melissa, not the little girl I raised, but the woman she had become. And maybe that is the hardest part of growing older. You realize that love does not guarantee loyalty. Sacrifice does not always bring gratitude. Sometimes, the very people you poured your soul into will turn away, and you are left holding only memories. Yet I also learned something else. Betrayal, as painful as it is, can become a turning point. It forced me to reclaim my dignity. It pushed me to stand up and say, "I am still here. I am still worthy of respect." That, perhaps, is the lesson I want to leave with you. If you have been hurt by your children, if you have felt discarded or unseen, know this: you still matter. Your life, your sacrifices, your love, they are not wasted. They are part of who you are, and no one can take that away. As for Melissa, I don't know what the future holds. Maybe time will soften her heart. Maybe she will one day sit beside me again, not as a stranger with papers to sign, but as a daughter who remembers the lullabies I sang and the nights I stayed awake by her side. Or maybe not. Life does not give us guarantees. The door to forgiveness is not locked, but it is not wide open either. It sits between us, waiting. And so, my story ends not with finality, but with possibility. A wound can scar, or it can heal. Only time will tell which path ours will take. If my story has touched you, if you see yourself in my pain, I ask you, please give this video a like. Not for me, but so others like you can find it and know they are not alone. If you feel differently, if you cannot agree with my choices, then leave the number 6 in the comments below and let me know your truth. And if you want to hear more stories that speak to the heart, that remind us of the strength hidden in our struggles, please subscribe to this channel. Together, we can keep these voices alive.